Let's talk more about the fate of newspapers and what their failure might mean for journalism. Paul Gillin is the author of the book Newspaper Death Watch, and he joins us now live from Massachusetts. So some in the Senate are calling it the endangered species. Is this really the beginning of the end of daily newspapers in this country?
Well, I certainly think it's the beginning of the end of a newspaper that arrives on your doorstep 7 days a week. 10 years from now, we may have newspapers in some sort of print form, but it's unlikely that they will be a true daily as we know them now. They will probably be produced in many media, including electronically, through handheld readers, through mobile devices, streamed over the internet, and the brands will survive, but not necessarily the print medium.
Well, if many of these local newspapers do disappear, how significant would it be for the future of journalism, at least here in the United States?
Well, I think we're in an uncomfortable period right now where we're seeing the collapse of newspapers is happening at a much faster rate than I think anyone predicted. And the institutions that will rise up to replace them, the journalistic institutions, are not in place right now. So I think that it's very uncomfortable now. We're losing something and we don't really know what we're gaining. I believe that the democratization of media that is happening through the internet will ultimately lead to a superior form of journalism as citizen journalism takes hold. But right now, we're mainly focusing on what we're losing rather than what we're gaining.
But do these local newspapers, though, still have an important role to play in that they hold local government officials accountable to a very large extent?
Absolutely, and we're losing that right now. Government officials around the country, the United States, are in fact losing their watchdogs and are beginning to enter a situation where they're running amok. And I think that will change. I think that new institutions will be put in place right now, but certainly that journalistic watchdog function, 25% of the newsroom jobs in the United States have been lost over the last 8 years. About half of that in the last 2 years. We are very rapidly seeing the watchdog function deteriorate, and to some extent this is leading to nervousness as we see that our officials no longer have anybody keeping an eye on them.
Nervousness on Capitol Hill as well. There was a hearing on the future of journalism just today, and one of the suggestions made by a senator, Senator Ben Cardin, was to turn these struggling newspapers into non-profits. Can that really happen? Something that would be similar to the public radio stations in this country. Could that work?
Well, I would like to see us stop talking about newspapers, because I think that implies that the medium of paper is important. I think news organizations are important, and I certainly think that news organizations, as they survive in the future, will be a mixture of publicly funded, philanthropic, reader-funded, advertiser-funded, transaction-funded. There'll be all kinds of different business models, hybrid business models that will emerge. I do not believe that Congress, government, or any federal institution should have a role in saving an industry that is dying. The fact is that the newspaper industry in the United States is dying. That's not going to change. There's nothing we can do to change that, and propping it up with federal funding is not an answer to the problem.
So no bailouts for the newspaper industry?
It makes no sense. It would be like bailing out the coal industry or the textile industry. I mean, those industries are gone. They're gone overseas. They're gone to the internet. There's no reason to try to prop them up. What we should be doing, I think, is focusing on the next generation, the new institutions that will emerge to replace the function that daily newspapers have traditionally performed. And we're seeing some very interesting experiments already form, and I think that we'll see them grow very rapidly as we shed the old and look toward the new.
So what kind of new economic model would work best, do you think, for the newspaper industry?
Well, the newspaper industry, as I said, is dying. It will not exist functionally as we know it in a few years. So there will be news organizations that will emerge. They'll be much smaller. They will be funded by a combination of different business models, a combination of, in some cases, philanthropic or government funding, in some cases, micropayments where readers will actually pay the bill. There will be advertising models that will emerge. I think many of these organizations will be very, very locally focused, because local advertising has been underexploited by traditional media organizations and by search engines. So local advertisers, your local dry cleaner, your local car wash, they do not have good places to advertise right now, and I think we will see these hyper-local news organizations emerge that will actually take advantage of the dollars that are stored up there waiting to find an outlet. So I think it's going to be we'll see a profusion of many different models emerge over the next few years. It's going to be very chaotic, very exciting, but I think it's also going to be, there'll be a lot of innovation applied to this problem.
Paul Gillin, the author of Newspaper Death Watch. Thanks very much.